Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session, as Justin said. And my name is Onuralp Sezer. I'm from Fedora Mindshare website and website and application representative. I am also a Fedora packager. Akash.
Hi, folks. I'm Akashdeep Dhar. I have been in a part of a previous talk as well yesterday in the website's 3.0 talk. I'm a part of the Red Hat community platform engineering team. That's my day job. But in the nighttime, I become this vigilante contributor. And then I contribute to Fedora websites and apps team. I have been a part of mentoring parts as well, looking after the infrastructure and bunch of packaging. Over to you.
Thanks. So let's get started. If I can share my screen properly. So let's do it. Let's go. So is it clear for everyone? Okay, awesome. So we have a nice clean screen. All right. So how do you join Fedora? How do you become a contributor? This is going to talk about it. So who are we? We are a community. We are a free and open source communities wish to contribute this awesome project, but there are a lot of them. So and this is very awesome and exciting. But if you want to become this big community, how do you do the first steps? And we would like to also talk about where are you starting to contributing in this project, where should I begin, what to do, and also how to become a successful contributor is going to be our talking point as well. So we are people from all over the world and come together with the various tools and softwares and materials to promote free and open source software, which is, in this case, we are using Fedora, and with many tools, we are promoting them all. And our goal is always looking for a potential and not a polish. So we want to help them to gain polish and establish the contributors. And we always want to encourage the new prospective contributors to communication, with the existing contributors. Oh man. Okay. Is it back? Akash, could you give me some signal to talk? All right, good, awesome. Sorry, guys. So let me rephrase it. So we would like to provide people to self-contained and well-documented issues to newbies to get their wet feet, to get started, to get their hands dirty, to do some contribution, and of course, in the meantime, have some fun. Also, help them, guide them, and help them to perspective to become a successful people and contributors. Also, we would like to establish a better mentor and mentee relationship among existing contributor and the prospective contributors, and provide very comfortable and safe and clean channel between everyone as well, which is very important in these cases. Because without the communication, we won't be able to help each other, and we won't be able to, move forward. So first things first, you basically need a Fedora account system to keep track all of your contributing and all the works you're going to do. It's going to give you authenticate to a lot of components and a lot of access. And then when you join in, you would like to go to one of our join system and also open up a ticket, and then we will give you the welcome ticket. And we would like to welcome you to the Fedora and show you the options, and we're going to discuss what you can do, what's your profession, or what you want to do. It can be even something you want to even learn about it in the time, and would like to contribute on it. So basically, this ticket's going to be the way to look to find their way in the community, which is very important. So once you get in, and when you get into the mailing list, when you say hi and getting into and join to the Pagure group, as I mentioned, we would like to basically find your options and to explore what possibilities you want to do. And then in the time, we would like to check the progress, how is your perspective is going, and can always come back and if you give up some time or depends on your planning in your life as well. So it's all up to your how much time or how much willing you want to spend on it. So because this, as we mentioned, this is all about to contribute to free and promote the software, and we'd like to have this free way and relaxed and basically comfortable way to contribute to it. So and so also we would like to mention that you don't have to know everything in the beginning. So you literally can be have zero knowledge about what is what. That's okay, as long as you're also willing to learn and willing to spend some time on it. We will willing to help you out and show the ways how it works as well. So this is also very important to say that. So we always like to have these opportunities to show and teach people as well. So in the future, they can teach others. So then we can basically get some help as well. Basically, we help you, you help them. It basically also help us too as well. That would be awesome. So next, we would like to discuss about some other points, but in this mention, I'd like to give the microphone to Akashdeep. Go ahead.
Thanks, Onuralp. Right. So before we get started with contributing or even talking about how people can get started with contributing, let's understand what this community is all about. So our four foundations are freedom, friends, features, and first. The freedom to have our code base as well as our cultures open and advancing our softwares in that way, making sure that all the contributors around us are friends and people to have fun around with, while you're contributing or you're writing documentation, designing stuff. The folks who are around you doing the same thing, they share your interests, they are your friends. And then understanding that with excellent software, it's the features that they build that build those things. So it's one of the foundational features as well. And finally, first, we are committed towards innovation and making sure that these features that we want to introduce, we are one of the first ones to make sure that they reach you. So these is what defines the community for the most parts. Over to the next slide. Right, so speaking about where to start from, Fedora is huge and people can be sure that if there's something that they know about, chances are that there should be something that they would be able to do from the get-go without having to spend some time into learning or doing the boring stuff before they actually can get their hands dirty into actually contributing. So it's widely distributed into parts like FESCO, which is our Fedora Engineering Steering Committee. Then we have our council objectives, which fall under the Fedora Council, as well as diversity and inclusion. And then we have the Mindshare part, which includes teams like design, community operations, and mentor projects. In Fedora Engineering Steering Committee, we have things like additions and spins, and then there's release engineering, which takes care of the packages that we include in this operating system offering that we have, as well as the architectures that we maintain it for. So a bunch of places that people can get started from. If you don't know coding, guess what? It's totally fine. You can definitely start with designing things, writing documentation, or just triaging issues, telling what's important, what's urgent, and what needs to be done first and what can be done later. Even that is a contribution. And let me be really honest, it's not a weaker part of contribution because every single contribution counts, no matter how big or small it is. We, after all, are a community of volunteers, and a majority of us are actually doing things in their free time. The next slide, please. Right. So, how do you become a successful contributor when you have found out that, yeah, this is some place you want to start contributing from? So, yeah, you did your first step. You made first contributions, and now you want to take it up by a notch. Let's see how you can do that. So, it's kind of the fact that we all started as volunteers, but following these principles or these methods that we're going to talk about in these slide and the next ones, we're going to understand how we can do that. So the first is time commitment. It's important to understand that, some commitment that requires time and effort. So if you think that you can dedicate that amount of time, you should come to it, but you should actually have some part of it left to things that you do for leisure. Doing work on one side and doing voluntary contribution on the other side, having no time to relax can be taxing. So it's totally okay if you're able to give little time. We value that as well. The next thing is, of course, to get permission from work and family. It's important to understand that as much as this is a contribution, a community of friends, work and family do take precedence over them. So understanding that, yeah, you do have the space and you do have the bandwidth to spare now that you have had your permission from them both. And then joining. The single big mistake that people do is, well, wanting to contribute from the get-go, wanting to make a change or wanting to fix an issue, introduce something. And once when that is done, they wonder what exactly should they do next. With no choice or with no plan in mind, chances are that people lose their motivation and then they drop off. It's important to understand that the goal should be long term, but with checkpoints that should be short term. So you should actually be able to see that, yeah, you're indeed making some progress towards that long term goal. And then finally observing that, yeah, this team right here, the one that I'm trying to join, it's organized in a certain way, has its own processes, rules, and their way of doing things, and then understanding how you can fit into that before you move ahead and be a part of it. The next slide, please. Right. So starting off with understanding what you want to work on. So that small granular goal that you want to achieve. You can start with a bunch of things like we would not want to recommend, or you can start with that one thing that you are good at. And when you're good at that, you actually see that, yeah, you're actually making progress in that specific thing. For me, it was documentation back in the day. So I had a bunch of experience from a bunch of different distributions because I was a distro hopper. I used to jump from one distribution to another and see how things used to work. So I had gone experience from that. But when I started growing up from that, from writing documentation, I moved on to answering questions to people's doubts on forums and then to developing stuff. So it's important that you start from one thing and then slowly grow from that. And then that one thing that you start from, it should not be very difficult that you lose all the motivation just trying to solve that one big problem. We all start from small things, and it's very important to understand that jumping into a deep end when you don't know how to swim is only going to be harmful. And that journey of contribution is, well, it's less lonelier if you have a mentor or a sponsor to help you with that. You have questions, if you have things that require solving, stuff like that, it's always helpful to have people that will help you. And we also have a strategic goal for 2028, that is to make sure that we establish a community where everyone is a mentor and everyone is getting mentored by someone else. So you will have someone that you can fall back to, reach out to if you have any questions regarding what needs to be done. And finally, keeping yourself busy when that first task of yours is done, because it never ends and you only go on making new friends, making new contribution, and all in all, just establishing this community as being something that is much better than it was before slowly. The next slide, please. Right. So, in a community of people that hail from a bunch of different countries, from a bunch of different time zones, like it's afternoon at my end, probably morning at yours, and probably the next day for somebody else, right? It's important to understand that communication is important, while understanding that communication is something it's totally fine that communication can get messed up, but it comes down to the contributors to ensure how that does not happen. So following the 2 ground rules in the next slide. Onuralp, the next slide, please. Yeah, cool. So following these 2 ground rules can help you make sure that the communication stays good for the most parts. The first is to, of course, being considerate that, yeah, my work, the one that you will do, will be used by a bunch of people, and your work will probably be a derivative of somebody else's. And any decision that affects you as well as the folks around you, the consequences of those decisions should be kept in mind before, making those decisions. And then the second one is being respectful. It's totally okay for folks to not agree all the time. Disagreements will happen, and it's kind of important for folks to proceed and coming up with new ideas. But it should not be an excuse for poor behavior or poor manners. People should understand that disagreements happen in ideas and not in people, so it should never turn into a personal attack. Following these 2 rules can make sure that you do continue to be an excellent contributor in the community. And then finally, in the next slide, we thank you folks for joining. This is the mailing list, and here's how you can reach out to the Join Matrix chat to introduce yourself and probably have a join ticket assigned to your name, and finally get started to contributing to Fedora project. Feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Exactly. I am also like to say a couple of things. I definitely agree with the last part. We have a very diverse community, and we have a lot of people thinking very differently, and we have a lot of going on in the world as well. Just be mindful, everyone. Everybody has their own personal life, personal issues, and personal times. So, and not everyone has their own best mindset sometimes, but that doesn't give any excuses to anyone to do any kind of disagreement or personal attack. Just try to be chill and think twice to some writing in, even if on a mail. Don't be just go in the heat of fire. So because this is basically the point that it's very important to know. This time of stuff is always give some issues and creating issues, but that doesn't mean you can do the worst stuff. Also, I'd like to call Matthew because he wants to say some couple of words based on what I see from here. So, and also in the meantime, if you have any question, we are waiting to do to say so.
No, you're just going to tag me on one of the slides that I did it go by without me noticing.
It was
okay, let's go back to the org chart slide, and maybe I think that Matthew can do a much better job at explaining where people can start from. The lesser deep ends of contribution.
I was paying attention. I just got mine slightly distracted. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
What was the question?
The question was for you to please, you can explain better than all of us into the charts because Fedora is huge.
The best starting points.
The best start, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of an intimidating chart, and I don't know if it's necessarily meant to be a starting point chart, but it's also actually a little bit more to show how big the project is and how complicated it is, which isn't necessarily a good beginning, really. I think the starting advice is to not necessarily worry about the chart overall, just know that all these parts are there, but find the part that's interesting to you rather than trying to connect it to all the things, because there's a lot going on and there's probably something that's interesting, to each person personally and other things that aren't so much. So that's
exactly.
Also, don't we have a new version of this chart Maria is working on?
There's a link Justin mentioned, but we should update this too. But there's a question I'd like to ask Matthew too as well. I will answer mine and Akash, but the question is coming from Justin. Said, he said, did both of you get your first start in Fedora? Any inspirations to share? But I would like to hear about Matthew's point of view as well. So this is going to be a bonus question from my end.
All right. Not me first, though. You
first.
Start.
No, you first.
Me first? Okay. Yeah, so I got started in Fedora. I actually was involved with Red Hat Linux not as a Red Hatter, but as a user before Fedora started. I was part of the Red Hat Linux beta program because there was like a secret program you could join. I was a systems administrator at Boston University, and I worked on our Boston University Linux project, which I think I showed off my. Oh yeah, this is we had our own little distribution that I worked on. It was very cool, and as part of that, when Red Hat switched to the old Red Hat Enterprise Linux strategy, and we didn't know what was going to happen to the community side of things, Fedora developed out of that, and I got involved with Fedora as that happened.
Okay, Akash?
Wait, I have to show off my 10 years of Fedora shirt here.
All right. Awesome.
That's indeed a cool t-shirt. Yeah. Right. So for me, it was back in the day when I was a final year college student, pandemic. So I could not step out of the house and do internships in places. So I started looking for open source projects to contribute to. And then I had this crap laptop on which Windows ran barely, and I wanted to play some games. So I started looking into distributions, and I came across Fedora. It's not as bleeding edge as some other distributions, and it's not as old as some other ones. It was a perfect balance. So I started using it. I started loving the software, and then I started slowly to get involved with the people around it. So it was first writing documentation as to how you can do, say, installing NVIDIA drivers on Fedora Linux, and then slowly developing some software that helps you do that in a much easier way. And slowly I found myself becoming an objective lead for the websites, and then find myself a job in Red Hat. So yeah, the involvement only got bigger and bigger, but it's something that I always wanted to do, it was very impromptu when I began, but it always felt right. And the community around you, the people, it always made you feel like doing more. And yeah, that's pretty much how it was for me. Over to you, Onuralp.
Okay. My involvement was completely different. So first things first, I'm not a Red Hatter, but my involvement was starting way more when I was younger. And one of my relatives told me that you should start using Fedora Core. And it was the very early days of the Fedora. I started using it and mumbling it. I have to say this first, I crashed system a lot of times. And I made a lot of mistakes. I destroyed my system because of the command line. I made a mistake. And I also tried to do how to install drivers, games, the usual mundane stuff, then towards the contributors. And I decided I started with my first involvement after I become a long-term user. I started to looking for what can I do for Fedora as a start. And I look at that options, what I can do. And I come up and I see that a Fedora Ambassador program was a thing in this time. And I decided to spread Fedora to everyone to learn and teach, because and I was already talking with a lot of people around the Fedora IRC chat, try to learn more about it and read documentation and look at the wikis, the old websites. It's very, very nice times. I remember those old, and also I like the blue as well. So that's another good point. And after that, I decided to become a Fedora ambassador. And I decided to make events all around in my country, in Turkey. I was a university student, and I gradually working with a couple of other teams around Turkey. And then I even helped them out laboratories with Fedora computers on it to spread Fedora, so they can do their physics calculation in Fedora, and I try to spend a lot of time to how to install it. And for a sacrifice, I even fail a lesson to do that. But I passed the lesson, of course. But I love Fedora more about it. And gradually, I become Fedora packager, a KDA contributor, Fedora website and teams application teams member, Mindshare representative, Mindshare member, and I'm still the same guy who were using this Fedora almost 12, 13 years ago, and still same passion on it. So this was my contribution to that.
It's amazing. Thank you both. Inspiring, I think. It's nice.
Thank you. But I like to. I'm wondering, is there any other questions? Because people saying a lot of stuff, but I would like to hear if there's any questions. It could be even a very basic question. Doesn't matter. That's why we are here to answer them.
I'm going to drop back off and let you handle those. All right.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Matthew.
Right. So if we don't have any more questions, I guess we did a really good job at explaining things, right? And yeah, for folks who are coming here for the first time around Fedora Linux, please feel free to take your time into exploring the community, the folks around here during the release party. And if you feel that there is some way that you can get started with contributing, totally, the community is all yours.
I'm going to give one or 2 minutes, and then we can drop off if there's no questions comes up. What? There's a question. Should I answer that? Something like under my special contract and my principal, I cannot answer that question. I'm sorry about that. But I do have a lot of power. Yes, that's true. But I cannot, say them all. So this is a secret. You have to find out. Exactly. So I guess we don't have any other questions. So I'm going to leave the stage to others. Thank you everyone who joining the this first talk. I hope you all enjoyed and have an amazing and awesome day as well. Bye.
Thanks, folks. See you around.